So today I want to talk about the Heart Sutra, the Hanya Shingyo again. Let me share the screen. I think today is the fourth time, but we are still stuck in the very first line. Let me read it in Japanese. This would be Kanji Zai Bosatsu Gyojin Hanya Haramita Ji Shoken Goun Kaiku Do Issai Kuyaku. Kanji Zai Bosatsu is the Bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, and in this case it's about you. Yojin is deep practice, practicing deeply, and Hanya Haramitsu is the paramita of prajna. Paramita means perfection or to transcend something, to cross over to the other shore. So in this title, this stems from Thich Nhat Hanh. So he's using this meaning of paramita when he says the insight. That's probably Thich Nhat Hanh's translation of prajna, the insight that brings us to the other shore. That would be the paramita of prajna. And last time I explained, or 2 weeks ago I explained, there's 6 paramitas: giving, holding the precepts, perseverance, efforts, samadhi or meditation, dhyana, and then last prajna. And what is common to these 6 is the act of letting go. Letting go something that belongs to you, or letting go yourself. In the case of Zazen, dropping body and mind. And for me, the paramita of prajna encompasses all 6 of these. So it's a total letting go. And letting go, of course, always also means to accept. So to let go of everything means to completely accept your present situation. So at that time, when you completely let go and at the same time completely accept, that's when you shoken goun kaiku. Shoken means to see something clearly. Goun are the 5 skandhas, and I will explain about these in a minute. Kaiku means that they're all empty, without substance. So what are the 5 skandhas? You might know one of the following sentences, which is shiki fui kuku fui shiki shiki sokuze kuku sokuze shiki. That is maybe the most famous phrase in the Hanya Shingyo. It means form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And form is one of the 5 skandhas, the first one. I listed them here, so you get the Chinese characters and the Indian word. The first skandha is form, or in Sanskrit it would be rupa. Everything that you can see or hear or smell. But basically, well, the substance that needs to be there for you to see and hear and smell. So it's forms outside of you, it's the sounds outside of you, but it's also your body. So your physical existence, matter, you could say, the material world, that's the first skandha, rupa. Then the second skandha in Sanskrit would be vedana, and that's perception. So you need eyes and ears, you need forms and sounds for perception to take place, but then perception, of course, is a completely different matter. In the case of sounds, the air is vibrating, but the vibration of air and the actual perception of the sound are completely different. Those are 2 different skandhas. And the word skandha means heap, so these are considered to be different heaps. There's the heap of matter, and then there's the heap of perception. And then skandha number 3 would be samjna. I'm not quite sure if you pronounce it like that, but it looks like you would pronounce it like samjna. And that would mean, in my view, making a concept out of something. For example, to hear a sound, ear needs to vibrate, then there's the perception of sound, but then you hear a bird, or you hear a car, you hear a plane, you hear Muho talking. But these two are slightly different. I don't have it here, but probably you all know this picture of a rabbit. You see a rabbit, but then if you look at it closely, actually you see a duck. But it's the same picture. Or there's this picture of an old woman, but then out of a sudden you see a young lady. It's the same picture. How come that you can see two different things in the same picture? Well, that's because the second skandha and the third skandha are different. Perception is not the same as grasping and making a concept out of it. There needs to be matter for perception to take place, and we need to have perception to grasp something. But these are actually two different heaps, so to speak. And then the fourth heap, in Japanese, this is shiki, ju, so, and then the fourth is gyo, which in India would be samskara. And this, in my view, is, well, your reaction to what you grasp. For example, you hear a sound, that's a bird, I like that sound. Or you hear a car, oh, I don't like that sound, it's disturbing my Zen practice. So we usually react to something in a positive way, or in a negative way, or in a neutral way. And you can see that in the internet. So it's either this or that, or you just move on. So that's the kind of three basic ways we react to something. And then the fifth skandha would be vijnana, which means, well, consciousness. And in this way, vijnana in this case, for me, it refers to the whole story we tell ourselves about the world. The whole world as we construct it, and including ourselves, our idea of who we are in this world. So the metaphor that I usually use is the game. So that's how we construct the game, and our idea of how we collect points and where we are, where our score is. Or another often used metaphor is the movie. That's how we construct the movie, and we place ourselves inside the movie as the main actor. But the moment you let go, you discover all of this is empty. It's all a construction. There's no substance to this. And I was suffering all the time because I thought this game is real. I need to win this game. I thought the movie is real. I need to be the main person. The movie needs to be all about myself, and it needs to have a happy ending. But most of the time the movie is not about you, and it not always has a happy ending. And that's why you suffer. But the moment you realize all of these 5 skandhas are empty, that's when you are saved from all suffering. Do ichai苦厄. Being saved from all suffering, from all pain. So that, in my reading, is my interpretation of the first line. Sorry it took me so many weeks to get here, but at least we have the first one. Xuan-san, if you like, please translate, and after that, if you have questions or other things you would like to share, please do so.
我们今天老师讲的还是第一句啊，老师讲的特别细致，我觉得我可能翻译的没有老师讲的好啊。 然后我们前面讲了观自在菩萨行深般若波罗蜜多时，今天重点讲的是五蕴，后面观见五蕴皆空，度一切苦厄。然后老师简单复习一下前面，就是观自在菩萨指的那个菩萨其实是你，就是心经其实是关于对你的，是关于你的，然后讲的是你的一个修炼和练习。然后行深，当你练习很深入的时候呢，就可以把你带到彼岸，就中文翻译成彼岸，把你带到那个地方去。那英文它翻译的是inside that brings，然后就是说，当你内观的时候，就会把你带到那边。就是波罗蜜多时，当你更加深入练习的时候呢，这个练习指的其实就是观自己内观啊，就是当你更加内观自己练习的时候，就可以把你带到那边，然后带到那边以后呢，其实当你带到那边以后呢，其实就是你看到五蕴的时候，中文这下面就是关键五蕴皆空，你就能够看到五蕴其实都是空的，什么也没有。这个时候呢，其实我们只是为了度这些苦。然后刚刚老师讲的这个让所有一切都随他而去的时候，其实坐禅里面讲的是身心脱落，就是当你完全的放松、放弃它，放手自己的时候，你接受它的时候，其实就是你能够看到五蕴皆空的时候。那刚刚老师讲了五蕴，其实五蕴呢，它其实后面就是我们特别有名的这几句话：色即是空，空即是色。那这五蕴后面只是受想行识，亦复如是哈。然后这五蕴主要第一个蕴呢就是色蕴 rupa，然后它这个色蕴指的是外面的形，就是这所谓的形，就是说，比如说我们看到的、听到的，还有你闻到的一些、尝到的一些，就是这些在你之外的，但是又从你身上出来反馈出来的这个物质世界，是表现出来这个形是色蕴。然后第二个是受蕴 vedana，这个受蕴呢，其实就是你实际上听到的这个物体是什么，实际上的这个东西是什么，是你身体之外的。然后第三个是响韵 samyana，这个响韵，老师刚刚说他的一个理解，其实就是指的是一个概念，一个概论，就是对这个实际物体的一个反馈。就是我不知道大家看没看到那个图，有一个图，就是你远观的时候，同样一个图，你看到是一个兔子，但是你近看的时候，它其实是一只鸭子。或者比如说一个图，你远看是一个男人，但是你再细看他是一个女人。那为什么同一个图会有不同？同样一幅画，为什么会有不同的图呢？但你反馈来是什么？老师说这个其实就是响韵的一个表现，它就是一个反馈。就是你在这个图当中捕捉的是什么？然后第四个是行运 samskara，这个行运其实指的是你的行为和反馈，你的一个具体的反应行为。你比如说，我们听到了一个车你在坐禅的时候听到了车从旁边走的时候，你可能有一个直观的反应，就是你不大喜欢这个声音，因为它打扰到你了。或者是你在坐禅的时候听到了鸟叫，然后你觉得这个非常喜欢，它其实就是你反映出来一个积极还是消极的，也直接的一个反馈，你喜欢还是不喜欢。然后最后一个是行运 vijnana，这个行运就是老师把它翻译成就是我们有我们的意识层面，你有意识的，就是我们这个世界整个这个故事，就好像看电影一样，把自己放到这个电影当中，你是里面的一个角色。然后我们经常在坐禅当中把它翻译成游戏，你把自己放在这个游戏当中，但其实你真正参透的时候，你真正往内看，你真正看到这五蕴这些的时候，你会发现其实，或者是你在参透这些都是空的时候，它全是没有含义的时候，其实你不是这个电影的主角，你这个电影其实跟你一点关系也没有，你不是这个世界的主角，这个世界跟你也没有，你不是他，这个世界不是围绕着你的，这个故事不是围绕着你的时候，你就会发现其实一切都是空的。然后这个时候呢，就会看到我们来其实就是为了体验这个痛苦，明白？然后所以当你看到这个电影的时候，而且这个电影不是关于你的时候，其实就是五蕴皆空的那个时候。老师刚刚大概其翻译的是这个，然后有问题的话可以提。
Thank you. So, if you like, please ask questions or share what you like to share. Tanya, please.
What do you think? Why could it be important to know about this differential kind of analysis you gave us about the skandhas? I've never thought about the skandhas before. Just one Tesho was about the skandhas, and I just had about a feeling what the skandhas might be, because we recite a Heart Sutra every day in every session and every day online. And so can it be helpful to understand what the skandhas mean, or to remember it by heart? Because I couldn't, when you explained it, it was so foreign to me, foreign kind of differentiation. Yeah, foreign kind of, I couldn't get an image of it. And what could be helpful about to understand this better, or get a feeling for this different kind of skandhas for the practice? I didn't miss anything yet about the skandhas, so I'm curious how maybe it could be helpful for getting on the path.
Is it necessary to know them all by heart? Probably not. For example, later we will come across that chain of 12 elements of mutual, depending cause and effect. And I couldn't tell you these 12 elements by heart. And it took me a long time until I got the Eightfold Path right. So these are supposedly helpful means to teach us something, but I think we shouldn't be attached too much. For example, in Western philosophy, that would be probably the area of epistemology, basically inquiring how we can get an idea of the world. How can we get to know the world in the first place? But you could probably do without the skandhas, or you could even develop more. I could imagine.
Or others,
for example. So it's not so important. I think the idea is just to get us a sense that usually when when you hear a car, you think you directly hear the car, but actually you're constructing something. And also, what is most important, this idea of who you are. Like, I am Muho, but this idea, I am Muho, it's a construction. It's something that I constructed. So, basically, I think the skandhas are a way to help us get behind this idea that all we tell ourselves, like, I'm this person, I'm important, or I'm suffering, whatever. All of this is something that we construct. And when we construct it, also there's a way to deconstruct it, to get out of this movie.
In my experience, it's all together. If there is no sense of self, there's no skandha or no problem at all.
Yes.
Yeah, and first you have all the problems all together. In that moment, there is no feeling of self. There is no need to construct anything. And I think that makes it difficult to explain it to other people, why it is so important to do this practice. I think most people don't. I couldn't, if I didn't do the practice, I couldn't understand it, I think.
Yeah, if you try to explain it to somebody who's not doing the practice, unless they're really into philosophy and they like to think about these topics, probably it's very difficult to get the point across. But the Indians, I think they really love to do this analytical philosophical thinking. So
Indians,
Indians, yeah, and also a lot of Germans, for example. But Indians, they're often even more philosophical than Germans. And the things that people like Kant or Hegel thought about, they thought about already 2000 years earlier. So For them, probably it wasn't so difficult, but for most of us, it's hard. It's hard to really get interested into this.
Thank you.
Joseph was raising his hand first, and after that, Eugene.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, because these are like quite subtle definitions or differentiations of the five. So I just wanted to sort of see if I got it right, because I'm having difficulty understanding the last three. Like the first two that I get, there's like the material, there's matter, and then there's the perception of it. But then the third one would be like an immediate categorization of the perception, like saying that's a duck or that's a rabbit.
Yes.
And then the fourth one would be something internally in the mind, like as we talk about this now, picturing that image of the optical illusion where it can be either the duck or the rabbit. And then the fifth one would be like a judgment about it, like whether I prefer the duck or the rabbit. Would that be right as a description of them?
It's not exactly what I said, but probably if you look through Buddhist handbooks, you will find lots of explanations and not all of them agree. My idea was the first one is matter. And of course, if you want to argue against the Skandhas, you could say, well, isn't matter something that we construct later? How do we know that matter exists in the first place? Isn't matter a construction also? But when we keep to the Skandhas, first there needs to be some kind of matter and also this physical body. Then there's perception. And then number three was what you said. You see a duck, you see a lady, you see something. So there's a pattern recognition taking place. Before that, it was just a sound. But then you hear Muho's voice. And if you wanted to have more than 5 Skandhas, for example, you would say it's a different thing to hear just a sound, then you hear Muho's voice, and then you hear words, and you discover meaning in them. That would be a different step, at least in my view. But then number 4 is what you called number 5, so kind of judging, labeling. That for me is number 4. We call something a nice sound, an ugly noise, something neutral. And then number 5, I think means basically consciousness. But consciousness is already involved in Skandha 2, 3, 4. Without consciousness, you can't hear a sound. Without consciousness, there's no pattern recognition. So for me, 5 means the whole big picture that we construct based on the first 4. So the first 4 are kind of the layers of the pyramid, and then number 5, that's kind of the tip of the iceberg of the consciousness that allows us to say, here, I'm Muho from Osaka, and Osaka is in central Japan, and today is May 5th of 2024. This whole picture that I have. And I'm talking to somebody who's sitting in Scotland maybe, and others of you are in Germany or in New Jersey. But that's something that I construct. It's not really reality. It's probably true. Probably most of you would say, yes, that's right, I'm in New Jersey. But that's because we share this 5th skandha. We share this big picture that we are constructing. That's how I see these 5 skandhas. But probably you will find others that explain it in a different way. And again, as Tanya hinted at, I mean, you could choose different explanations. I'm not quite even sure if 5 is enough. Like in Buddhism, you have also this. You have not only one consciousness. Consciousness has a lot of levels. The 5th skandhas probably has levels, or there's a spectrum there as well. Also, the skandha of grasping. I mean, there's several levels of grasping that go on. First, we see a pattern, but then we see, for example, a triangle, and then we see something more behind the triangle. or this labeling. It's also not just this and neutral. Of course, that's the basis, but then there's of course much more subtle labeling that we do in the fourth skandha.
So is the fifth kind of involved throughout all the previous four then, or
I could imagine that there's a kind of mutual, how do you say, influence between them. It's not kind of one-way thing, first, second, third, fourth, but the fifth one probably also influences our way of pattern recognition. We also need an idea of the world to be able to see a young lady or an old woman when we see this picture. A dog, because he has a completely different conditioning, would see completely different things there, for example. So yeah, the fifth skandha also influences what we do on the second or third level, and vice versa, I would say. Yes.
Yeah, even the first one, because physically,
yes.
like
of
a
course,
dog
of course. Yeah,
would see, I don't think they see color in the same way we do, etc. So there are physical differences to how they will, the dog will form its third, fourth, and fifth skandhas. Yeah.
Yeah, or our genes, that would also be this first skandha, and of course that makes a big influence on our lives and our perception and all of that, our mental functioning.
That's very interesting. Do you know, this might be a way off question now, but do you know any Buddhist philosophers who wrote anything about the skandhas of, say,
oh, I'm sure there's lots, but actually, well, in Antaiji, we never really studied this thoroughly. I personally didn't do so much, but I mean, Nagarjuna is a famous philosopher that's connected to Hanya Shingyo and all these wisdom sutras, and I'm sure he wrote about this. Buddhaghosa is a famous Buddhist scholar who did a lot of Abhidharma work. He's more in the Theravada tradition, but he wrote a lot about this stuff. There's a whole school in philosophy that's called Yogacara. That school supposes that everything is basically constructed out of our deluded minds. And they did it in a very subtle, analytic way. Exactly what delusions, how do you say, mutual influence each other so that we construct this world. And well, Zen doesn't base itself on the scriptures, but we are free to study all of that. And if you're into that, I mean, go to the library. I'm sure there's lots, even in English language, not so much maybe as in Asian languages, but there's quite a lot. But to be honest, I did not so much. I did the, how do you say, the minimum, the minimum that you need to read the Hanya Shingyo, but I'm not an expert into Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah. No, sorry, I think I might have frozen there right as I finished the question. My sort of just wondering was, I wondered if there had been anyone who'd written about the skandhas or the dog specifically, and how they, or of animals in general, the animal mind, for example.
I'm not quite sure. I'm sure that also exists somewhere. I mean, you need to explain how the difference between the human realm and the animal realm works. But you shouldn't ask a Zen monk that question. At least not me. I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think I have to get going today now, actually. But
yeah, and
thank you as always.
Julian says you should ask him. He sure knows.
Yeah, I will do that. I'll send you a message, Dad. So yeah. All right. Yeah, I have to get going now. But thank you again, and see you next week.
See you. Thank you
on
for
next
joining.
Week as usual.
Yeah. Eugene is also raising his hand. Please, Eugene.
Yes, thank you, Michal. My question is not going to be about the today's topic, if this is okay, of course, but this is just something that I wanted to ask. So, while reading through lots and lots of the tales of the ancient Buddhist masters and the way they started their path in Zen Buddhism, and about all the monks and about all this legendary characters, so to say, you often can see that the rules on which the people were accepted to the monasteries, to the monastery communions, were like kind of very, very harsh. People had to wait there at the doors for a long time. They were sometimes beaten, they were shouted at, there were, well, lots of things that kind of unaccepted in the modern community, for example. So I wanted to ask if this is the same way today. Well, I understand kind of it's not the same way, right? But as far as I understand, these days these rules are much more mild. It changed, they're much softer. And since the change happened, what does that mean for the Buddhist tradition? I mean, it was that harsh, as far as I understand, due to the fact that the monastery community and the teacher, he needed to understand that the person really has serious intentions, and it's not just a whim or not just the today's mood that the person wants to become a monk, but it's a real serious intention, and the person needed to demonstrate this intention. So if the rules are much milder these days, does it mean that there are more people in the monasteries that are, well, if it would be correct to put it this way, are not that serious about practice as the ones that were, as it was like in previous centuries, so to say, because they are not going through that much more serious trials to get into this community? Thank you.
Difficult question, but I don't know much about monasteries outside Japan. Inside Japan, even today, you find monasteries where they're pretty strict when you want to get in. It's not so easy to get in. You have to wait outside for a while, and you might get beaten and stuff like that. For the reason that you explained, you have to demonstrate that you're really serious about this matter. In other places, it's easier, like, for example, in Antaiji, you arrive and you get in. Does that mean that people in those monasteries where it's easier to get inside are less serious? I wouldn't say that it's necessarily so. For example, in old days, it also happened that people became monks because, or wanted to become monk, wanted to enter a monastery because they knew that they would get 2 or 3 meals a day. Maybe they were starving. So that was the reason. So they needed to have these strict rules to prevent everybody to come in just so that they are fed. While today, at least in lots of parts of the world, in most part of Europe, in China and Japan, probably you have no danger of starving. So you don't have to become a monk so that somebody feeds you so that you get dressed. Actually, probably you have a higher life standard outside of the monastery. So even if people voluntarily enter the monastery, there needs to be some kind of motivation, because otherwise they wouldn't leave their worldly lives behind. Probably there were times where it was the opposite. It was so much harder to survive as a farmer than as a monk that everybody would have become a monk if it would have been easy to become a monk. So, of course, it depends. It depends. The problem in Japan is that lots of the monks that enter a monastery only do so because they were born as the first son in a temple and they're expected to take over the temple. So they go to a monastery for a year or 2 or 3 so that they get the license, so they can take over the temple from their father. And that means that even if you go to the main temples, which have the longest history, 90% of the monks are there only because they have no other choice. Even if the entrance examinations are very strict in these places. While in a place like Antaiji, where it's rather relaxed, because you get no license there, the people you meet there are more of the serious type, I would say. But either way, I mean, the question when you enter a monastery is always, well, why am I there? Why do I want to go there? And after 3 months, after 1 year, after 3 years, you have to ask yourself again, what am I doing here? Am I really following my initial, how do you say, calling that brought me here? Or I'm just staying here because I feel like I have no other choice? That's a question that, of course, you have to ask yourself from time to time. What am I doing here? What's the purpose of my practice? Or even with our weekly Zazen here, when you sit, sometimes it's worth asking yourself, why am I sitting? What am I doing here? Nobody, of course, how do you say, there's no entrance examination for the Zoom meeting. Everybody can get inside. Nobody beats you, but still, why? Why am you here?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment on that question.
Yes.
I was thinking about a very similar question myself recently, and that I don't know if my idea is the way that many Zen monasteries are, but when the current place we're practicing yoga in Tokyo, the teacher kind of was like, okay, you can join our class, but maybe I only have a few extra spots. But that's actually for the space limitation. And I'm realizing, you know, when it's harder to get into somewhere and you kind of realize like maybe you're doing something special and you take the practice a little more serious. And I was thinking maybe like the master, the Zen master or the yoga master or the martial arts master, they know that what they're doing is kind of not special in a way. And the secret is like, well, they're not. And then if you just let everybody in and you're just kind of, okay, everyone can do it. And then it seems less special. Maybe it's less motivating and people don't do the practice as good as well. So maybe they kind of create this, they make it seem exclusive and make it seem special to kind of, they want you to practice, but they're trying, it could be like a form of motivation to make it seem more exclusive and more special, as just to motivate the students to practice more serious. I was thinking that might be a case. And yeah,
I'm sure that some people do that. I usually try to avoid that. I try to, how do you say, remind people that they need to motivate themselves, but some people do it by limiting the space. Also, a different topic is money. Like, for example, nobody has to pay to attend this Zoom meeting, but some people say, well, if it's for free, then people will say, well, if it's for free, then it can't be good for anything. And if it's expensive, then people get serious. So also for sessions, that can be the case. If you offer a session, a retreat for very cheap, in a way it's nice because everybody can come, but the people who come are often less motivated than if it's rather expensive. Then you get the motivated people, but some people that would have come, but because they're so young, they're still students, couldn't come. But what you just said is certainly true. Sometimes if you raise the bar, that means that people are more motivated to cross the bar. Any other questions? Anything else that you would like to share? If not, it's almost 9:15 now. So if there's nothing else you would like to ask or share, I would say let's see each other again next week. Next week it will be about Sawakis to you again, and then in 2 weeks we get back to the Heart Sutra. So thank you for joining. Thank you for hosting us. Next week, are you still in America?
No, we're going back to Japan on Friday.
on Friday. And on Monday, are you ready already for the meeting? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so next week, Xuan-san will be in Tokyo again, and we can meet this same space, same time. So I wish you all a nice week. Thank you for joining. See you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.